talking to Drs. Jeffries and Thompson. And Dr. Jeffries, before we end the show today, let's give the two of you an opportunity to, you and Dr. Thompson, the opportunity to take the information that we've talked about the African civilization and the impact that it has had and the influence that it has had. How do you get this information down to a lower level? Because it's fine and that the two of you as researchers, college professors, dealing with college students know this information. That's fine, but what about at a lower level, perhaps at the high school level or at even below that? How can this information be disseminated to a wider audience?
I think that's one of the great challenges that we face. How to get this enormous explosion of information about African peoples that reverses this whole negative information flow that was institutionalized for so many years. How do we get this information down into our families and into our institutions and organizations where it will have an impact? And that's one of the themes of our conference of this weekend, to be able to put it in the hands of the youngest of our peoples who are being educated. Why? Because knowledge is power, and that means knowledge of African peoples is empowerment for African peoples. So if our youngsters are constantly bombarded with the negative images, the Tarzan images, the Sambo images, then that negative projection falls on them. But if they know that African peoples were the founders of the human family, that they raised the pyramids and temples of the Nile to their consciousness of the spirituality and their God consciousness, that they invented mathematics and writing and philosophy, when this knowledge is put in the hands of our young people, it will give them greater strength and self-motivation. I was at an affair in the Black History Month where they had a school in which the preschool through grade 8 put on a program on history. They presented the black inventors that invented so many of the things that are part of modern society, the light bulbs, the Elijah McCoy and his work. And the other classes presented, for example, the Massachusetts 54th, the fight of black people in the Civil War for their own freedom, etc. So that I saw that this can be done if properly taught, properly trained instructors are available. It can be taught to our people at every grade level. I saw the preschool, I saw the first, second, third grade, the 8th grade actually implement a curriculum of this enormous truth of African world studies.
Dr. Thompson, coming from Chicago and certainly with a large African-American community there, what are you doing in that great city to sort of disseminate this information throughout?
Well, on 2 occasions we actually worked with Chicago Public Schools in creating a curriculum guide for the schools. And that was done through the public school system. In addition to that, with the group I'm working with in Chicago at the Center for Inner City Studies, the Comedic Institute, we actually wrote a curriculum guide for the public. So actually we're working with community organizations as well, with the churches, but I think most importantly, you will have to get to the administrators. You must deal with the faculty and the administrators of these school systems, or of the church school systems and what have you, and teach about Africa. So we have a program called Teaching About Africa, which we've had since 1986. And across the country, in many cities, we have these programs. But the thing about being a member of the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilization, we have these regions. So therefore, wherever you go, the West, the East, the Midwest, or the South, we have communication with each other, and we're working with schools and actually bringing forth all of this information about Africa. The other thing is we cannot leave out the large, growing African communities coming from Nigeria, Ghana, Ethiopia, Eritrea, and all those places, South Africa, Zimbabwe, in Chicago, in Illinois, in Michigan, in New York, and what have you.
Here in
so now linking up with these organizations, these groups, I would consider to be most important.
Very good. And of course, I think that in order to do this, Dr. Jeffries, this requires quite a bit of resources from organizations like the organization that you have. And what are you doing, and how do you reach out in order to get people to support what you're doing financially?
Well, fortunately, we are self-funding. and the contributions made to our organization, if scholars come from around the country to participate in our various conferences, and we move the conferences around the country, they pay their own expenses. And the purchase of books and other materials, tapes, helps to create the funds of money necessary for us to do the things that we have to do. And so I think it's important for us to understand that it doesn't take a great deal of money. It takes an interest, it takes an effort. The first teacher who opened up the world to me was my mother, and she taught it simply by making sure that the books were properly in place for me to understand myself, and she laid down the foundation for us to grow and develop. So our people have to start to be critical on how they spend their monies. We earn great deals of money, and we have them, but it all doesn't have to go for cars and for big homes. You've got to have a library in that home, and you've got to have your youngsters knowing that they're heading for higher education and for a greater fulfillment of their lives.
You know, Dr. Thompson, I think one of the organizations that has played a very, very significant role in terms of trying to spread the African civilization has been the Black Studies departments all over the nation. Over the last 3 or 4 minutes, 3 minutes that we have here, you and Dr. Jeffries, why don't you give us some statements in reference to these organizations, these so-called Black Studies departments and whatever, on not only historically Black institution campuses, but campuses all over the nation.
Let me just say one thing. We have a website. Yes, ASCAC, A-S-C-A-C.
ASCAC.
ASCAC.org. No, go ahead.
Yes, and in that website they can connect with a lot of the activities going on around the world in terms of these organizations. But it's important that you mentioned the Black Studies. I was one of the founders of the Black Studies movement in New York and also on the West Coast. I set up the Black Studies Department at San Jose State University. And right now, as we speak, the National Council for Black Studies, which was formed in the 70s, just as we formed the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations in the 80s when this explosion about the Nile Valley took place, the National Council of Black Studies is meeting in Atlanta as we speak. And hundreds of scholars like ourselves and teachers and many, many hundreds of students are meeting doing some of the same things. I wish I was 2 people now, or I wish I had a helicopter. I could be here in Nashville and participate, and I could fly off to Atlanta and participate. My nephew, Dr. Hassan Jeffries, who's now at the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, he's presenting in Atlanta, and he will be awarded his PhD in May from Duke University. He was raised with this consciousness of world studies, so he can move in the African world, but he did his PhD on Lowndes County Freedom Party in Alabama. And he knows the importance of making the connections of African peoples.
Dr. Thompson, over the last 2 minutes that we have, let's give you and Dr. Jeffries, you first, Dr. Thompson, an opportunity to make some final comments to our audience this morning. We've got about 2 minutes. That gives you about a minute, and then, of course, Dr. Jeffries will have some of the things that you want to leave with us.
My most important statement is I'm happy to have been here in the state of Tennessee, a very important place for the development of the pyramid idea, which I saw in Memphis, and a continuation of the idea that we are an African people. And I think that's most important.
Dr. Jeffries.
And I would like to say, as Frederick Douglass said, in struggling against enslavement, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. And we have to continue to struggle so that progress can be realized. And I would like to say that I want to thank you in Tennessee for inviting us, and because I was affiliated with a son of Tennessee, Alex Haley. I worked with Alex for 7 years and helped him develop the whole Roots program. And Alex showed that with perseverance and understanding, these enormous truths about us as world peoples can be revealed. And the whole Roots phenomena is an example of African world studies. And it begins here in Tennessee, where Alex's family gave him the foundation and the interest to allow him to connect with Africa.
Over the last half minute, where did you meet Mr. Haley, and say something about that?
As I set up the Black Studies Department at San Jose State in California, in San Jose, he was in San Francisco working on the idea for Roots and trying to develop it. And he met some people who, because he had this great interest in reaching into Africa, who knew me and then my experience of going back and forth to Africa many times and studying. So we connected in 1971. 1972, we got a $500,000 grant from the Carnegie Corporation to look at the black family worldwide. And we put on board teams of scholars that participated in this enormous work. So a great credit goes to Alex Haley, a son of Tennessee, for his contribution to African World Studies.
As well as you, Dr. Jeffries, and of course, Dr. Thompson. Let me thank the two of you for coming by and giving us that information, and let me encourage our audience to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.
You're watching